Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome. That, as they say, is that. Marvel Comics. Let's go ahead and get started. The Lord of the Vampires is back. Back in print, that is. I am the Uncanny Omar. This is Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. Today I'm going to be giving you an advanced look at the Tomb of Dracula Omnibus Volume 1 from Marvel Comics. So let's take a look at this book together. You all voted for it, and Marvel reprinted it. The Tomb of Dracula Omnibus Volume 1. Before going any further, a big thank you to David Gabriel and the fine folks at Marvel for sending us an advance copy of this Omni. This Omni is due out in the direct market and book market on September 23rd or 24th, depending on where you get your books. What we're looking at here is the direct market cover, and this one is done by Gene Colan. On the left-hand side is your standard edition cover. That one is supplied by Neil Adams. That's the one that's going to be available everywhere, while the direct market cover is only available at places like cheapgraphicnovels.com, waltzcomicshop.com, bdcosmos.com, Dying Breed Collectors, Comics Bugle, Read Comics, Organic Price Books, panel-bound books now, In-Stock Trades, Tales of Wonder, DCBS, and of course Forbidden Planet and your local comic book stores. Everything else underneath the dust jacket is the same. So let's shift the focus back to this. There's the Marvel logo, the Tomb of Dracula. There's, of course, our main character, Vlad. And then this damsel in distress, which we're going to see a lot of covers like that in this collection. The Marvel Omnibus logo, the Tomb of Dracula logo, Marv Wolfman, Gene Colan, of course, taking the top billing. Volume 1, hoping a 2 and 3 sometime soon. Interesting enough, they did not redo the dust jackets to make it look like that Silver Age look. Could be because of the years that this was originally published, that the comic book came out, but I don't know. I thought they were going to go with the new spine, but they didn't. They went to the original spine. Time and again. Look at that freaking font. That's huge. I love it. Time and again, he saved the world for himself. Parental advisory, what's collected, the ISBN down there, the Marvel logo. Now, this stuff has been previously, of course, printed before. This is the actual third printing of this omnibus. And as I mention to people every time on my live streams on Saturdays, every new printing will be a smaller batch of printings. So this will be the smallest batch of them, in case you are wanting to pick this up one day. I don't want anybody that voted for this to miss out on it, but it has been available in complete collection. And, of course, the two printings before this, and then Marvel Masterworks. And yes, I will be comparing it to this, because that Omni that came out before both of these books is mapped different than both of these books. And we'll look at it internally. As a matter of fact, I could never find a Volume 2, so I sold my Volumes 1 and 3 many years ago. If only I could have held on a little longer. Here's the flaps right here. My revenge has just begun. I spread it over centuries, and time is on my side. That is a quote from, of course, Bram Stoker's Dracula. And the bio on the creators, Marv Wolfman, Gene Colan, Chris Claremont, who did the giant-sized books, and Don Heck, who actually did the giant-sized books. And then, underneath the dust jacket, Tomb of Dracula Omnibus, the spine of the book. I do love that. Marv Wolfman, Gene Colan, Volume 1, and nothing on the back. Let's go ahead and get this big, beautiful book open and talk about the type of stories found in here, and also later on do a comparison, looking at the extras and the build of the book as well. Okay, let's go ahead and get this opened. You have your black end sheets, Tomb of Dracula Omnibus title page with this fight between Werewolf by Night and Dracula by Gene Colan. Over here are your credits, the writers, artists, inkers, colorists, editors at the time. Written, of course, a majority of this is Marv Wolfman, but he's not the one that started it. There's also Jerry Conway, Archie Goodwin, Gardner Fox. We saw that Chris Claremont got a credit, and David Anthony Kraft. Artist is Gene Colan for all of the single issues in here of the ongoing series, plus giant-sized chillers. Mike Plug, of course, the Werewolf by Night, and Don Heck doing the giant-sized Dracula. Inkers, Tom Palmer. Man, if there was ever an inker Anyway, Gene Colan, Vince Coletta, Ernie Chan, Jack Abel, colorists like Tom Palmer and Glennis Ween, Petra Goldberg and Linda Lessman, and then your editors and select art reconstruction by Tom Zioku. And over here's your table of contents, where you're going to find each and every one of these issues that are collected in here, and when they originally came out, and of course how it's mapped. So I will say the mapping is perfect. Like it's great. It does not have the Dracula Lives, unlike the Masterworks. The Masterworks and the Complete Collections put the Dracula Lives issues in between the issues, and I'll explain why it was different here in a little bit. Your introduction by Tom Field, which was in the original introduction. So yeah, this book was, I think, originally printed in 2008, if I'm not mistaken, and then it was reprinted almost a decade later in 2017 or 2018, sometime like that. And this is the third printing. So collected in here is Tomb of Dracula 1 through 31, Werewolf by Night number 15, Giant Size Chillers number 1, Giant Size Dracula 2 through 4. The book has a total of 784 pages and retails for $100. So welcome to this world where the Comics Code relaxed a little bit. Not they chilled out for the whole thing, but they relaxed a little bit and started letting some supernatural elements being included in comic books. And the very first thing that Marvel did in the year 1972, when the first issue came out, was, we need to get Dracula. It's public domain now. And sure enough, it was. So that's what they did. They went after Dracula, and they made it into a comic book. Of course, he wasn't the only character. They also made comic books of The Mummy and Frankenstein's Monster, and then, of course, The Werewolf by Night. But this is the most successful horror comic. And I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, Lex Luthor was a villain, right? But this is, at Marvel, the very first time we had a villain with a successful comic book, because this went, not including the annuals and the giant size stuff, this was 70 issues worth of Dracula comics about this character that is preying on the innocent and drinking blood and a complete villain, the undead. And I think maybe Darth Vader with the series, the different ongoing series, probably hasn't beaten. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at one time this was the #1 comic book featuring a villain. So it all starts off where everything, of course, begins in Transylvania, where we get to meet some new characters. We get to meet this young guy named Frank Drake. He is there with his young lady and a friend of his, Clifford. He finds out that he is the descendant of Vlad Dracula, and everything is left to him, including the castle. So Castle Dracula belongs to him. So him, along with his lady friend, and Jeannie and Clifford, all three of them go to Transylvania. Once they get there, they get to the castle, and Clifford's kind of a jackass, and he separates from the group. Like, immediately, the castle just doesn't want anybody in, but Frank is a descendant of Dracula. And in this world, in this Marvel comic, Bram Stoker's Dracula was just an adaptation of things that happen in real life. So the things in that book really happen, as told through these pages. And a lot of those elements are borrowed heavily for the character of Dracula at first. So this guy, Clifton, that's his name, Clifton, ends up, not Clifford, that's the red dog, ends up finding the Tomb of Dracula. He's in the coffin, and he has a stake through his heart, and those are his remains. So what does he do? Old Clifton just takes out the stake, because that's what you do when you find a dead body, apparently. And Dracula comes back. He lives again, and immediately starts attacking Clifton, goes after Jeannie, actually ends up kidnapping her, and then, of course, turning her eventually into a vampire. Now, at first, towards the beginning here, you're going to notice a couple things. I think it's not until issue 4 that it changes. Number 1 is his skin tone is white. It's not until issue 4 that it starts changing a little bit. You're going to notice that it's Jerry Conway writing the first 2 issues, and then after him, it's Archie Goodwin. And after he leaves the book, it's, oh my gosh, it's Bob Haney, I think. But they're only in it for 2 issues each until we get Marv Wolfman in the 7th issue. But the first couple of issues are just establishing the rules of Dracula. He's back in the real world. He's back in modern time. He's preying upon women. And now Frank knows about his descendant. and he knows how to defeat these vampires with a stake through the heart. In the first couple of issues, he does have to dispose of his lady friend. So he's kind of lost it all. And in the third issue, with Archie Goodwin's first issue, we're introduced to two new characters. We have Rachel Van Helsing, you can probably guess who she is the descendant of, and Tosh Nitai. And Tosh is, he's mute, he doesn't speak, but he is kind of like a bodyguard, and he's a bit of a badass. And these three, so Frank, Tosh, and Rachel, are going to play a huge part in this. Because that is the beauty of the Tomb of Dracula, is that it builds heavily on the supporting cast. And one other thing to note in the intros, in the many intros, in the Masterworks, and in the complete collections, you'll see that Gene Colan actually, and see, the skin tone is now changed right here, based the appearance of Dracula on Jack Palance, not Christopher Lee nor Bela Lugosi. I mentioned Christopher Lee because when you're reading these stories, it does feel like a mix of the Hammer flicks, those Hammer movies, which I love so much. I hope one day we'll get some 4K versions of those amazing stories, and Dark Shadows. So it feels like a long soap opera. Some of these stories continue. As a matter of fact, issue number 1 really is the beginning of everything. You can jump in with any issue. Gardner Fox, now, did I say Bob Haney? Gardner Fox is the one that does it for 2 issues. But it does feel like a long soap opera. You'll see these vampire hunters go after Dracula, end up losing him, and then him just showing up somewhere else. And this is the Monster of the Moors. I love his artwork, man. Gene Colan is just perfect for this. Funny enough, Gene Colan doesn't do many of the covers towards the beginning of this collection. It's a lot of different artists like Gil Kane, or even Neil Adams, who I mentioned earlier. But we start seeing this team get bigger and bigger. We start seeing people that have had ties to Dracula in the past and descendants. So we saw Rachel, and in this issue we meet Quincy Harker and his daughter Edith Harker. And of course they have ties to the Harkers from the original Tomb of Dracula, or the original Tomb of Dracula comic, the original Bram Stoker novel. So that's who's introduced in this very issue, and this is also the beginning of Marv Wolfman's run. Because you're reading about a villain, it's not superheroics in here. Sometimes there's heavy loss. Sometimes these characters go through hell because of everything that this creature of the night is doing. This is the introduction of Blade. There's a lot of great first appearances here, especially if you were a fan of the 90s Night Stalker comics and the Ghost Rider comics. You know, Ghost Rider really kicked off that era of the dark Marvel in the 90s. And it was so amazing to grow up with X-Men in the 90s, but then you had the darker side of things, like the Darkhold and Night Stalkers and the Spirits of Vengeance. Like, oh man. Anyway, this is where Blade gets his first appearance, and he comes in as a vampire hunter. Now, it's not the Blade Daywalker yet. His origin isn't really explained at first. That gets talked about a little bit later, and there's a little bit of retcons. Now, I had mentioned, because I do want to stop here really quick, and in this very issue number 11, I had mentioned that this does not include the Dracula Lives, because the Omnis are mapped different. The Omnis didn't have the black and white magazine. This book was so successful, much like Conan the Barbarian, that Marvel said, hey, we can make a magazine series out of this, and that's where the Dracula Lives magazines comes in. Those are collected in here, in the Marvel Masterworks, and it's also collected in the third omnibus. They put all the magazine black and white stuff together in that book. This just has the ongoing comic plus the giant size issues, but they do mention things that happen in Dracula Lives, so I did want to point that out while I'm here in this issue, in case people are wondering, wait a second, why wasn't that collected here? Probably because they wanted to, again, just do a straight reprint of Volume 1 instead of remapping everything. And they were different. You didn't have to read Dracula Lives, even though that little editorial note is there, in order to enjoy the stories. That was more of a mature theme book. Again, much like the Savage Sword of Conan with the violence and the nudity, that could show a little bit more than you could, well, a lot more than you could in the Comics Code approved single issues. We do have a 3-parter. Like, it starts to remind you that this is a comic book that has an ongoing story. So we do have a 3-parter where the vampire hunters kind of succeed in killing Dracula, and then by the time you get to the 14th issue, you're reminded, oh, that's why Dracula is still an ongoing series. Okay. So yes, sometimes they're successful, sometimes he gets away, and then at times he will end up teaming up with them. Not so much in the very first volume, but he will eventually end up teaming up with them. What you're not going to see here are superheroes. Not in the first volume. You're not going to see even the occult superheroes like Doctor Strange. That does happen. And as a matter of fact, I think Doctor Strange is the one superhero that actually fits into this so well. The only crossover you get through here is the one with Werewolf by Night, and it happens in this very issue. And it's all the story about Jack Russell, the Werewolf by Night, and his girlfriend Topaz ending up in Transylvania because he's looking for a cure. That's where a lot of these stories end up, is he's looking for a cure to become human again, and she ends up getting kidnapped because Dracula wants to know exactly how her powers are. Now, one thing to note is during your read-through, if you're reading this for the first time, you're going to notice some changes to the rules. Like, at first, he has to sleep in a coffin. It has to have his dirt from Transylvania. That will start changing later on because I think probably the editors and writers it became a hassle to remind them to, hey, let's get some more dirt from Transylvania, but he forgot it this time. Eventually that goes away. I do love this issue right here. The cover's so awesome too. Instead of a damsel in distress, it's Dracula waking up to, whoa, what's happening? There's a lot of great covers. And again, Gene Colan with that beautiful painted pencils. I mentioned a little bit of my excitement when talking about Gene Colan and Tom Palmer. If there ever was a team up in Marvel Comics for 2 creators, this ranks up there with somebody like to me, John Byrne and Terry Austin, like the inker that really makes, or not really makes the penciler, but just makes them shine. And also a reminder that we had teams like this, like Jack Kirby and Joe Sinnott on Fantastic Four. They stayed on this book the entire time, and Gene Colan had to like almost petition to draw this book because at first he was rejected by Stan Lee, and that's talked about here in the intro. Actually, it's in the Masterworks intro, and then they actually show the original pitch piece of art that he drew to send over to Stanley, and Stan was like, all right, true believer, you got the job. Here we have Lilith making her first appearance. I know I've talked about this book before because it's been collected in a couple of other collections, but it is properly mapped here. It belongs here. This is the first giant-sized Dracula. Eventually, the name changed to giant-sized Dracula, but at first it's called Giant-Size Chillers, and introduces us to the daughter of Dracula, Lilith. And she makes her appearances in the ongoing series, so I'm glad that it is properly mapped, just like the original printing. So yes, I had the original printing, and I had Volume 3, but I could never find Volume 2. So guess what happened? I was like, I'll just get the complete collections. And I ended up selling my Omnis. Oh my gosh. I think I sold them before the second printing. And I got excited and mad when I saw the second printing. I'm like, oh my gosh, are they going to print them? And we never got a printing of the second one. Like the second printing of the first Omni, and I thought, we're going to get a second volume. Yes. It never happened, unfortunately. Issue 25, this is one of my favorite characters. Again, if you're a fan of the 90s, you know who these characters are. A little bit different here, but this is Hannibal King, baby! Hannibal King making his first appearance. I love this dude. He is a private detective, and that's how he starts off in this book. So this book has a lot of great first appearances, including, I forgot to mention, like, some of the villains. I'm talking about, like, the supporting cast. In I think it's in issue 13. We have a lot of like first appearances in that one because that's part of the big like trilogy. But in issue 13, we get a bunch of characters, including one that was actually made into a movie, Deacon Frost. However, he looks a little different. He's an older man in this instead of the hot young dude. Who was it that played him in the Blade movie? Stephen Dorff. Yeah, that he appears in issue 13. So he might not be recognizable to you if you're coming in here from the Blade movies, and I guess neither would Blade. But Hannibal King makes his first appearance here in this issue. And then we have the giant-sized Dracula. These are ones that are written by Chris Claremont. Don Heck, of course, doing the art in here. And those are collected in the right place. But Gene Colan is the one that is drawing the main ongoing series. So, if you're looking for the good guys to win, if you're looking for superheroes showing up, you're not going to find that in this volume. This will remind you that this is a story of a villain. At times, you'll feel bad for him, and at times, you start thinking, well, maybe he's not that bad of a guy. I can kind of see where he's coming from. And you will, and that's the sign of a good writer. They'll make you feel for them. Not justifying what Dracula does, though. Kind of, this is probably why Marv Wolfman worked perfectly on something like Deathstroke the Terminator. Like, you have a villain, right? And it's not like he makes you feel pity for them, but almost makes you think, like, oh, that's the reason why they're doing this. So, that's what this is. That's what the Tomb of Dracula is. It definitely has this gothic feel to it. The art completely helps that just come together. The panel layouts, the shadows. It's just amazing. And I'm so glad that it's back in print in case people missed out on it. And eventually, you know, we will get some superheroes through here because it is a Marvel comic. And of course, crossovers sell, especially when it's guest starring some kind of new or one of their hot superheroes. Now, here in the back, this is the one that I was talking about. This is the pitch. This is the tryout piece that got Gene Colan the job. And I guess he was trying to make him look like Jack Palance. And then over here are covers before the corrections and placement copies, courtesy of Tom Palmer. And I think, yeah, we've talked about this in the Blade Omnibus, but they had to change a couple of things, especially on Blade. Lots of covers with damsels in distress. That was a thing. It's a great horror comic. And then this is the different collections. I forgot there were essentials. I never did pick these up. I wonder what I bet Gene Colan's art in black and white looked amazing. And then the omnibus. And this doesn't have, doesn't have any of the other extra. So this is an exact reprint of the original printing. So let's look at the build. 784 pages. And again, retailing for $100. This is sewn binding. And printed at the iMac printer. And I said this just recently, that the iMac printer paper stock has changed. It's not as thin as it used to be. As a matter of fact, I'm so used to when I see iMac printers that whenever I was back here, I thought I had 2 pages, but it was just 1. You still get bleed through, like that is still happening. But even the Donnelly printer has bleed through, but you get bleed through like this happening. And as far as the way the double page spreads are done, here's an example. So you have minimal gutter loss happening. Now what I want to quickly do is compare it to the Tomb of Dracula first, the complete collection. There are no epics yet, but one day I'm sure we'll get one. So let's go to the very first page over here. You have a black border, but it's a bigger black border over here with bats, but yeah, this is what I want to compare what the art looks like. So it at least at first glance, is the first time I'm looking at it, it does look like they're using different scans, because you can tell, well, for example, here on Jeannie's shirt right there. So the artwork looks like it's cleaned up a little bit. So I wonder what scans they use. We'll look at the Masterworks here in a little bit, but you can see here, whereas over here, color looks like it's touched up. So maybe it's just for this book that they I would assume this was printed later, that they would just use these scans. And I know they definitely restored it for the Masterwork, so that will probably look different. But this gives you an idea just how different this looks compared to the complete collection over here on the left. And we'll do one more page. Because I actually want to get to Dracula, right? I mean, that's what the whole thing is about. Me still pasty white. But yes, the complete collection does have, does it have it in the, yeah, the Dracula Lives stories in the back, whereas these don't. They have, that will be in the third omnibus. Let's go back to the beginning and compare it to the Marvel Masterworks, which have the latest scans and the artwork has been restored. The Tomb of Dracula complete collection was printed in a matte paper stock. This, however, or satin actually, it wasn't quite matte. This is printed in glossy, as this is. And just looking over here, looking at the cross hatching and the lines. Actually, let's go back to, yes, right here. So I was curious as to what the original color looks like on her shirt. Yeah, I wish I had the original printing of Tomb of Dracula Omnibus. I don't anymore. So if you have it, yeah, pull up to this page and see what color her shirt is. Is it yellow like the complete collection, or is it white? That might give you a clue as to what the scans they're using on this are. Let's see. Let's go over here. The white on the eyes. Actually, over here. That's where they cleared it up some. Other than the pink, has more of a pink tone to the skin tone. I mean, it does look very similar to the scans they did here. And we know that in reprints of, like, example, Fantastic Four Omnibus Volume 2, they've used the new scans from the Masterworks. But it's looking very similar. Well, let's look over here. This is one that was way different in the complete collection. And, of course, got to get to Dracula. Come on, Omar. The heck. Yeah, let's get to that page. With Frank and the wooden stake. So it does seem like they are using newer scans for this. Because I know for the Masterworks, that was the whole purpose of the Masterworks, to do the restoration. Beautifully done. So this is closer to the colors. But over here, I mean, they do look like it's been touched up. So, yeah. Okay. But that is it. That's what Tomb of Dracula is. That, as they say, is that. Now, hopefully we'll get a volume 2 sometime. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcondition at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget, the CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. That was the content, the page count, and build of this omnibus. In the comments down below, let me know if you are picking up the Omni, if you're getting the Masterworks, or you're going to try to finish out the complete collections, if you're hoping for an epic collection of this one day, which I'm sure it will come. And of course, if you're needing a volume 2 and 3, and hopefully Marvel will be reprinting those as well. Any questions, leave them down below. Smash that like button on the way out. Everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.